Hi, and welcome to this next module of our Foundations in Media Technology class. Today, we're going to be looking at Photoshop. This is one of our two instructional videos covering Photoshop, which is one of the premier editing programs for editing photos. It's used by artists and graphic designers to do a whole range of things. There are like a million things you can do in Photoshop, and we're just going to scratch the tip of the surface here. So first, as usual, I want to share with you the Canvas page for the course on photo editing. You can see the objectives that we'll have here. Want to let you know that Photoshop is naturally a destructive program. Now that sounds really bad. What I mean by that is it's a program that essentially will take a creation, take a photo, and will manipulate it so it gets further and further away from the original intent of the photo. And where that's important in terms of mass communications, especially if you end up taking my photojournalism class, is the whole goal of a journalist is to capture a moment in time, to capture a moment in history. And we want that photo to be as representative as possible to the actual moment. So Photoshop is a destructive program because the more you edit and manipulate a photo, the less and less it is like the actual moment in history. With that being said, Photoshop has several great uses, even for photojournalists and people in media who are still trying to keep things as true to possible. You can do a lot of things like cropping, of course, which most of you are familiar with doing on your smartphone. You can also do things like uh, editing the tone and the color, straightening photos. These are all things that you've probably done on your iPhone for photos you've taken that you're posting on Instagram, perhaps. But in Photoshop, there's a little more precision you can do with them. This week, that's pretty much what we're going to be covering. Next week, we're going to look at some more advanced Photoshop techniques, but I do want you to know that Photoshop is a program that in our mass communications department, it's something that we really touch the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more you can do with it. And taking a class at the art department or in graphic design will help teach you much more about Photoshop. So here we're going to focus on using Photoshop to really overcome some of the technical limitations of photography. I have a handout for you that, of course, is a guide to what we'll be doing today in class. Here's the link to the Photoshop user guide directly from Adobe. And I have 3 helpful video links in addition to the video you're watching now that will help you with the project that we're doing today. Your project files will be in this folder that you can click on and you will download. Really, your project files this week are simply just 5 pictures that you're going to use. So as usual, it opens up as a zip file and you will need to just open it up and you'll see the 5 photos there. The first thing I want to do is open up Photoshop. It should be PS on an icon on your computer, and you can see it pulls up a screen like this. And what you can do is just drag and drop an image here. I want to show you the files that we downloaded just so you can get an idea of what we're working with this week. The first is a photo called All Stars, and that is simply a photo that I took of my son's baseball team when they were practicing for All Stars. It was raining that day, so we had the luck of getting to practice in the indoor football training facility for the Georgia Bulldogs. One of the benefits of living in Athens and having a member of the team be the son of Coach Kirby Smart. Another photo that we'll work with is called Deer, and this is from my backyard. And it's just a family of deer walking through the backyard. Another photo we'll look at is family. This is my loving, happy family. That's me, of course. My wife, Carla, my oldest son, Jaden, my middle son, Jackson, who's a Packers fan, which is very unfortunate, and my youngest son, Matthew. We were at the Bears-Falcons game, of course, rooting on the Bears because, I'm from Chicago. Um, the fourth photo we could work with is sunset. This was from my vacation with our family in Clearwater Beach, and this was my son trying to get a picture of the sunset, and I took a picture of him taking that picture. And the final photo, this one not from my family, but one that I took last spring at a Piedmont tennis match, but it's a nice little action photo. So I have Photoshop opened up on my desktop now. One of the first things I want you to do, just to make sure we're kind of working from the same template here, is I want you to open up Photoshop and Preferences and go to this Guides, Grid, and Slices option. And here we want to put on what we call a rule of thirds on our screen. And this is a concept for when you're editing photos where you really want the action to be happening on a rule of thirds. And I'll explain that more as we get to it. But once you're here under Guides, Grid, and Slices, make sure that's selected. What you want to do is put a grid line every 100%. So I'm going to type in 100. I'm going to change this to percent. And on subdivisions, I just want to select it to 3. Okay, and now I'm just going to hit OK, and that will make sure that I have my rule of thirds set. Now I need to drag and drop an image into here, or you can go ahead to File and open an image, or you can just select New File. But I think the easiest bet for me, and one of the reasons why I love Macs, is the ability to just drag and drop an image. So I'm going to take my All-Stars image, and I'm just going to drop it right here into Photoshop. I have my All-Stars photo opened up here, and you can see this picture is just of one of the coaches talking to the kids on the team on the Georgia practice facility. Here's the toolbar for Photoshop. There's a lot of different things you can do there. We'll talk more about some of the tools in our next video. But this week, we're really focusing on this one tool, the cropping tool. You can see now I press the cropping tool, and now we have this box that forms around the photo. Now you'll see when I grab one of these little white squares here, my rule of thirds line comes up. The rule of thirds line kind of looks like a tic-tac-toe board. And the reason why that comes up is because when we crop photos, we want the action, we want the central point of interest to be on one of these lines off of the center square, okay? We don't want photos to be dead center. So in other words, this would not be a good crop because we have our central point of interest in the photo dead center. So we want to, when we crop, we always want to try to make sure our central point of interest is slightly off center, somehow touching one of these lines. I'm going to put this back to its original form here so I could tell you about another thing. So a lot of times when you crop photos on your iPhone or smartphone that you have, it doesn't matter what aspect ratio the photo is because you're going to post it on social media. But if you are actually printing a photo, you want to pretty much keep your photos to a certain constraint that it shoots at. So, for example, for this photo, it was shot vertically. And if I want to make sure, if I want to print this out, at a CVS or even on a printer, or I want it to fit a specific criteria on a website that I'm going to post it on, we want to crop this, but we want to keep it at its original ratio. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say here original ratio. And what that means is whenever I move an element of my crop box here, it's going to keep it at the same ratio that it was. That's generally a good rule of thumb if you're ever going to be printing photos. So for this photo, I'm going to start by just cropping this at its original ratio. Now, how do I want to crop this? I'm looking here at the bottom. I don't really like that this kid's hat is just kind of sitting here. He wasn't really in the photo. I'm going to see how much of him I can take out. I'm not really concerned about getting the last names of my players in there. So I'm going to crop it there. I'm going to see if I can move this down just a little bit. And you can see it's also shrinking the photo on the sides as well. Um, I do like the idea of getting in, some semblance that we can know that this is Georgia, because that's one of the cool things of the photo. Um, I have these players listening intently to the coach. I do have a little bit, I cut his ear off. I don't really like that, so I'm going to move this a little bit. And I think I'm happy. So when I'm done with my crop, I'm just going to hit the return key on my keyboard, and boom, there's my photo, slightly off center. You can see my rule of thirds is gone, but I do have a lot of that space on top of the photo completely missing, which is good. I kind of like where this photo's at now. The next thing I want to do is I want to tone this image. And the idea, again, with photojournalism is to adjust the photo so it looks as close to real life as possible when I took this photo. Um, and so we don't want to do any crazy things with this photo. We don't want to make it, like make these shirts gray or something like that, or make them say Demarest instead of Athens. But we can do some slight adjustments with the toning. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up levels, which I'm going to go under image, and I'm going to go under adjustments, and I'm going to go to levels. And you can see this little box will pop up. And this box will allow me to adjust the whites in my photo and the blacks in my photo, the color white and the color black. So you can see here, if I drag this all the way to the right, it's completely white. If I drag this all the way to the left, it's completely black. So my blacks are at the level 0, my whites are at the level 255. If I go under the input level box here and drag this a little bit to the right, you can see how I'm gradually making it a little darker. Now that's way too dark. Um, maybe I could just move it to like 5 there. And then how can I make this a little whiter to make the whites pop out a little more? Maybe that's a little too much. Maybe I could keep it here. But I'm gonna put it all back because I want to show you a method that I really like using. These little droppers can also help you set your tone. So if you have a perfect black point in the photo, a gray point in the photo, or a white point in the photo, you can click on the eyedropper and click on the point, and it will adjust the rest of the colors in the photo to that white, black, or gray. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my white eyedropper because I feel like we have some perfect whites here with these jerseys. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the coach's jersey here, and you'll see what it does with the photo. So it automatically adjusted the photo. You could see the colors pop a little more. So I'm going to keep it here. So that's adjusting the levels of your image. The second thing you can do when it comes to color is adjust the curves in your image. So I'm going to go to adjustment and curves, and you'll see it will bring up this little histogram, it's called. And this allows you to have even more precision with your adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag this up, and you can see how we're making the photo a little brighter. But then if I take a point here and drag this in, I'm making it ever so slightly darker. And you can really mess around with that how you want. I'm just going to hit cancel to bring it back to normal. And I'm going to open this back up. And once again, I want to show you how you can use the eyedroppers to help you adjust the curves in a photo. Once again, we have a black point, a gray point, and a white point. And in this photo, I feel like we have a really good white point. So I'm going to go ahead again and click on his jersey, and it did very little adjustment. I want to show you in contrast, if I think I have a good black point, and maybe we'll take the hat. You can see how it makes the photo much darker around him, and it makes the black kind of pop out a little more. Well, I'm not really happy with that. So I'll undo that, keep this as it is. So I'm happy with the edits to this photo now. The color, I feel like it's cropped well. Um, the color kind of pops. I'm content with this. I feel like I don't need to do any other adjustments like straightening it out, which we will do with a photo in a minute. I want this to be in color, not black and white. I'm going to go ahead and save it now. And just like any Adobe product, it's important that you save it the correct way. Otherwise, it will save as a Photoshop file. And you don't want it to save as a Photoshop file because you won't be able to open it unless you're opening it in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm saving it in the location that I want. And once I have the location that I want, project files, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I save it as a JPEG. So I'm going to call it All Stars. I'm just going to call it All Stars Edit. So I know this is what I edited. I'm going to click Save. And here's an important thing. If you are saving a photo to print out, you probably want to save it as a large file. And you can see here, this is telling you this large file will be 4.8 megabytes, which isn't a lot. If you're saving it just to like post on Facebook, or no one uses Facebook, sorry, post on Instagram or another social media site or a website, you can save it at a medium quality or a high quality, and that should be fine. This is about half the file size of what the maximum was. This was shot on a smartphone, so that's why these sizes are relatively small. If you shoot things with a DSLR camera, the file sizes will automatically be larger, but I'm happy right now saving it as a high quality image. I'm going to hit OK, and then it should save. And you can see here the difference between my regular All Stars photo and my edited photo. Okay, you can definitely see the cropping I did from photo 1 to photo 2. And you could also see the color just pops a little more in photo 2. And I'm going to do one more with you here. I'm going to go ahead and look at this deer one. I'm going to go ahead and drag this in. Okay, I love this photo. This is just sitting in our back patio, and this family of deer came walking by. The first thing I want to do with this photo is I want to straighten this image. Because I was shooting this with a phone, and you're not always holding the phone the correct way, and you could really see how this is not really a straight line, because you can see, for instance, there's a little slant in the tree, there's a little slope here. um, so the way to do that is you want to go ahead and select your crop tool, and where it says straighten here, I'm going to click on that. And what this will allow me to do is kind of draw a straight line. I want to find a straight line in the photo. Um, and my straight line here, I feel like, is this tree. And I'm going to just click and hold this down, following the edge of that tree, because I know that tree is in a straight line, right? And that's about as far down as I can go. And you can see what it does automatically is it flips the photo. So now you can see the tree is straight, and that's going to impact how I'm going to crop this photo. So the next thing I'm going to do is, as we discussed before, is crop this photo. And unfortunately, it looks like if I want to keep the whole baby deer in, I'm going to have to crop this inward a little bit. I'm going to take off my original ratio and make sure I'm able to just adjust this how I want. We'll move this in a little bit. Maybe I need to move this down. Uh, Man, it really stinks that I'm going to get the edge of that baby deer cut off his foot, but I'm going to have to if I want to keep it straight. I'm happy with this. Let's say I'm going to hit enter, and then there's my photo. And one thing that I think is key here, in a photo like this, we do have action. And so we want to leave some breathing room for this family of deer to move. In other words, if I crop it right here, then any of the movement that I have in the photo is pretty much eliminated because where's this deer going to go? So it's one of those kind of rules in photojournalism that when you're cropping and there's movement in a photo, you always want to leave some room so the movement can continue to happen. So I've cropped this photo. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some adjustments to it. And again, we'll pull up the levels. Don't Maybe I have a perfect white in this photo. Let's see if I can kind of get maybe the bushy tail. One other thing you can do is if you do command and the plus sign, the plus equal button, it lets you zoom in on the photo a little bit. So they all have the cute little bushy tails. I'm going to click on that, and you see it adjusts the whites just a little bit, and adjusts the image on the photo. I'm happy with that, so I'll hit OK. And then I'll go ahead again and pull up my curves. And again, I'll click on my white eyedropper, and I'm going to have to zoom in here so I could really try to see if I could find that tail again to get the white. And it did an ever so slight adjustment here, but let's say I'm happy with that. Again, I'm going to go save as, and I'm going to save it as deer underscore edit. And I'm going to keep it as a high file. And let's look at the difference between the two. So there's my edit, and there's my original photo. And you can see here, of course, the cropping is obvious, but you can see here in the edited version of the photo, um, there it's a straight line. They're actually walking on a straight plane now. And the color does pop just a little better on the deer. As you can see in your assignment prompt, you will have 5 photos after you download the file. What I want you to do is I want you to crop and adjust the color of all 5 of those photos. I don't care how you do it. Like, you can have a different crop than I do. That's totally fine. A different color adjustment than I do. That's completely fine. But I do want you to turn one of them into a grayscale photo. Real easy exercise. If you remember, you just go under image, mode, and grayscale. For that one, you won't need to do any color adjustments because it won't matter. So one of the photos you can crop, turn it to grayscale. The other 4 photos, I want you to crop and adjust the color. And then you'll submit 5 photos into your folder when you're done, and you'll upload that, and you will be done for the week. And next week we will move on with editing photos in Photoshop, and we'll do some fun things like erasing backgrounds and creating cutouts. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.